Okay, audio? Yes. Hello, everyone. Let's get started. So let me finish setting everything up. I apologize. I'm still kind of tired and I'm in that middle ground between having headache and not having headache, where it's like something else, where it's like vague, discomforting fuzz. So I'm still messed up from the trip and everything, the lack of sleep and the things, hello, and the things I experienced on the way to, in, and out of West Virginia. Such a magical place that does everything in its power to try its best to convince you to not return to it. So we'll wait a minute or two for people to show up, and then I'm just going to get started, regardless of who is or isn't here. So, like I said in the description, this is going to be a shorter one because I'm kind of out of it, and part of it is just going to be me going through pictures and showing you guys some of the stuff, some of the better things like the aviation photography I got to do since I finally got to fly again for the second time in the last 6 years. The first time in the last 6 years being back at the start of the month when I came back down from escorting my mother up to West Virginia by road. Then I flew down. This time I flew up to help her make the road trip back down to my parents' place. Let's see. Anybody? Whoa! Okay, let's see. $5. Thank you. I wasn't expecting that. That's that quickly. No, Cardozo Luciano. West Virginia is not not almost heaven. It's something else. It's not hell either. It's some like other thing like off to the side in its own place of uniqueness. Okay, let's see. I'm not doing like a full rundown of stuff this time because I'm tired and out of it, like I said, and I know the headache is coming. But let's see some major things that happened. Uh, the IDF struck some of some of Iran's natural gas production facilities where the pipelines come on shore from the Pars gas field underlying the seafloor of the Persian Gulf between Qatar and Iran, largest natural gas field on the face of the earth. When it was discovered, it had over 1.3 quadrillion cubic feet of natural gas decades ago. And even after all the production that it's gone through for three plus, maybe 4 decades, it still has between 1.1 and 1.2 quadrillion cubic feet remaining. So IDF struck the production facilities, cut about a quarter of Iran's capability, and eye for an eye, quarter for quarter, Iran launched a ballistic missile wave, fired enough to get through the interceptor screen, and damaged pretty equally about a quarter of Qatar's natural gas production capabilities from the Pars gas field at their major site where everything comes on shore at Ras Laffan. So Qatar normally has been producing about 21 billion cubic feet per day, and they said the damage, uh, if things return to normal and they were able to start exporting LNG tankers again and everything, would knock them down to 15 to 16. For the moment, though, they're only actually producing between 4 and 5 because they need a little under 4 for their own domestic natural gas consumption, since basically 100% of Qatar's electricity is generated by gas-fired power plants, and the extra 1 billion cubic feet per day or so they export via a short undersea pipeline to the UAE, because the UAE is a lot more oil than gas, and their natural gas domestic consumption is about 6 billion cubic feet per day, while their production is only about 5. So they have to import about 1 billion cubic feet per day from Qatar. But they might be able to resume exporting some LNG tankers again, as I started mentioning, since it was started to be observed back on Monday. Some vessels, other than Iran's exports of oil tankers, some vessels have now started going through the Strait of Hormuz unharmed. And apparently, so far, the deal is holding. Iran has not gone back on it. They have agreed to allow vessels taking stuff to India and or Pakistan out and then back in to fill up again and go back out. So regardless of where they're going to get the oil from, whether UAE, Kuwait, etc., vessels supplying India and Pakistan are being allowed in and out right now. And supposedly they have agreed to do the same for China. So we're going to wait and see if we suddenly notice additional number of daily crossings as the number starts climbing back up, and that the next like portion that adds on to it are vessels bound to and from China. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. So far, it's just been oil tankers. Maybe they'll start including LNG tankers in that as well, but India doesn't order that many of those. China does, so China would start to uh, start need to start reacquiring shipments from Qatar. So we'll see if that's part of the agreement, or if it was only for oil tankers going to those three countries. And India might be able to profit off the top a little bit. They might be able to pull a Russian oil situation or scenario where, since where they can, you know, order a bunch of oil and exports and stuff from the Persian Gulf nations as one of the few countries that can get through without being targeted, order way more than they themselves consume, and have some of the tankers like pull into port in Mumbai and dock overnight, but not unload the oil or anything, and instead then just leave port the next day and sail to Europe or Japan or South Africa or wherever. And, India adds like buys the oil for the current price, but then adds like an extra 10 or $15 on top to resell it to the actual final destination. Since that's how for the seaborne exports, that's how a lot of the Russian oil that still got out was making it to its final destination, was getting third partied, especially through India specifically. So we'll see if that arrangement starts coming up for Persian Gulf oil. In regards to the total supply situation math as of the moment, so let's see. We had a total of, let me make sure I do everything correctly. Since 8, uh, 3.5, or 4, so 12, 13. It's 2, or rather 2.5. So 16. Yeah, okay. So it was 17 to be sure. 17 million barrels per day normally left the Persian Gulf. And so, as of right now, Iran, as the U.S. has not done the apparently upcoming invasion and seizure of Karg Island yet, Iran has obviously, before allowing these other ships, still been exporting its own oil at a rate of about now 2.5 million barrels per day, which is versus their prior 1.5. So that's 2.5 out of 17 that is still leaving. So that would mean an actual deficit of 14.5. It would also mean, running basic comparison math, that Iran's domestic oil consumption has crashed because of the war, obviously from between 1.6 and 1.8 million down to now somewhere around only 700,000 barrels per day of domestic consumption. The UAE was exporting about 500,000 barrels per day from its Gulf of Oman outside of the Persian Gulf port just to keep everything running. Now they've diverted extra stuff there and maxed out its capacity. So that's an extra 1 million barrels per day that's getting out that way. That would bring the deficit on the market down to 13.5. Saudi Arabia was exporting about 1 over on their Red Sea port, but now they've been diverting their oil across the pipeline to export more and more. As of a few days ago, they were up to 4 million barrels per day going out through that port. So that's an extra 3 that's being diverted and getting out. So that would bring the deficit down to 10.5 million barrels per day from the market. And now that these vessels are being allowed to leave from, but only for India and Pakistan, and apparently now potentially China, but we're not sure. Another roughly 1.5 million is getting to leave the Gulf through the Strait, so that would put the market deficit at 9 million barrels per day. And the ones that are getting to ship stuff out, as in where the oil is coming from, that is going to the permitted countries, India, Pakistan, and now maybe potentially China, is predominantly the UAE and Kuwait, as they both abruptly stopped turning down their production. They were in the process of it, but then stopped because a few days before this started, because they likely got advanced diplomatic notice that these countries over here were going to be allowed to actually get stuff through the strait. So they kept portions of their production on. Actually, the UAE has most of it on, so that they are the ones that are currently supplying this. And Saudi Arabia believes it should be able to get its western port up to a maximum of 6, which would then take the deficit down to 7. But for the moment, we keep it at a deficit of 9 million barrels per day. You can call it, or here, I'll have them side by side. Physical deficit is 9. Deficit technical is 8, because the market was in oversupply, as OPEC had been pushing production back up to try to further crash oil prices for the sake of competition elimination. So you can take your pick between the two. There's a physical deficit of 9, but the technical deficit is 8. So let's see. What else was I going to do with that? Yeah, not counting the reduced demand in terms of countries within the Persian Gulf area, because they're supplying themselves. They would not be reduced demand on the receiving end of these exports, but demand destruction has begun, even in just 3 weeks, because of how high prices have gone up over the last 3 weeks since all this started. So some of the most demand flexibility comes from within the US, ironically, as the US is usually in present day around 9 million barrels per day of gasoline consumption out of the roughly 25 million barrels per day globally. So roughly 40, a bit under 40% of gasoline consumption globally is just the US. There's a lot of flexibility in US gasoline consumption uh, because because Americans like drive around everywhere, even when we don't have to. And also, especially in the South, the region that I'm stuck in, there's a lot of people called, or who like to be thought of at least as quote unquote rednecks or manly men. There's people who own pickup trucks, even though they don't actually need them. Like out of the many people on my street, there's within like visual range, looking down the houses, there's 8 people who own trucks, and American households always have more than one vehicle. Uh, they so they do also have like regular cars, but the dudes of whatever age, whether teenagers or up in their 50s and seniors, will, as long as gas prices permit, they will always drive around in their truck because that signals that they're manly and attractive. However, in the event of high gas prices, like at the moment, and in the much higher gas prices that are oncoming, they will switch over to just driving their car. Like, for example, uh, there's there's one older couple down the road who they drive a truck usually, but now they've been going everywhere in their smaller little Toyota Camry. So difference between 15 miles per gallon versus 35 miles per gallon, obviously. And like, yeah, out of everyone on my street in both directions that I see who owns trucks, there's only one guy, our next door neighbor, Donnie, who actually like legitimately needs a truck, actually uses a truck as part of his work and job. Everybody else, it is just a redneck manly man aesthetic. But other than that, uh, people across the US will also switch over to just driving less or being a bit more conscious about their driving style. And people who drive in areas where there is some kind of public transit available will switch over to the public transit. So, US gasoline consumption since this all started has dropped by about 500,000 barrels per day from 9.2 down to 8.7. And uh, there's been there's been high de there's been a dip from elasticity in airline travel worldwide. The number of flights going around has dropped by close to 10% since everything started. As flights are getting canceled, airlines are consolidating multiple flights into single flights, and also people are themselves canceling things or no longer booking flights because the prices went up. So about half of that has been a drastic reduction in stuff around the Persian Gulf. So that would count as stuff that would be like domestically fed there. So 10% of the flights would be 10% of 8 million barrels per day of jet fuel demand would be about 800,000. But again, knock off about half of that because a lot of that is Persian Gulf country flights related. So you can count that as a global reduction in jet fuel demand over the last 3 weeks of about 400,000 barrels per day. So on top of the U.S. gasoline demand drop over the last 3 weeks, that's demand reduction of about 900,000, and total, the only other country that I could get like really recent updated data for was from China, and they don't give it as a breakdown. They only do it as total. But they were right around 17 flat, and they have dropped down to 16.75 rounded. Don't know from where, but we can at least say that's roughly a drop in China of 250,000 barrels per day. So total, the total that counts at least is minus a bit over 1 million barrels per day from demand destruction. So that would effectively make the deficit uh, on original full paper a bit under 8 million barrels per day. The technical deficit a bit under 7 then, because again, OPEC was oversupplying the market before this all started. So remaining deficit about 7 million barrels per day, counting in the demand destruction that I know of, because I, again, couldn't get that recently updated numbers from anybody else as of yet. If Saudi Arabia is able to get that up to a full 6 million barrels per day on their west coast, that would be an additional 2 million that would otherwise be going out through the Strait of Hormuz that will have been diverted. And thus, these numbers will shift down to 6 with a real 5 as the remaining deficit, which would come more back in line, close enough to previous energy crisis cutting points from instances in the past. And also, obviously, if Iran does start or does continue adding countries or destinations to the list of those whose tankers it won't target with water surface drones, then more would thus start being able to resume coming out through the strait itself. But that's the math of where that all stands at the moment. And in pricing, the market, the speculative price or the futures price, aka the gambling price, is still staying stubbornly between 100 and 110, whereas the actual physical price, the crude delivery price, that is what's being paid by end customers, countries, corporations, regions, etc., actually receiving tankers or receiving pipeline deliveries, etc., is there's a disparity between these two because the physical delivery price being paid is now up to between 150 and 170 is its current fluctuating average. On paper, the highest it's ever been. Technically accounting for inflation, the brief spike for a couple weeks in 2008, right before the financial collapse, would have technically been around or above 200. So we're getting close in real value. The highest the physical crude delivery price has touched as of yet was yesterday at $173 per barrel. And I know prices differ between like different states and everything, but in the state I am in exile in South Carolina, the local gas prices went from about 250 3 weeks ago up to around 360 to 370 as of now, depending on the different between, different individual towns and different gas stations. Let me see what else I had. Oh man, thank you. Dang, I had no idea I was going to be getting this many chats today. Hold on a second. Oh, let me chug that water. Thank you. You too. That's $15. That makes up for why am I turning up my speaker volume? That makes up for the money I lost in the airport on the way on my flight up to West Virginia to retrieve my mother. Because in the airport, since it's not like you can get stuff from anywhere else, if you want anything to eat, uh, any kind of thing from like any food place or even just a snack from like a convenience shop, that would be, between four and uh, like $8 outside, inside airports is now like 20 bucks, because they know you can't go anywhere. So I got a thing of glazed glazed chocolate munchkins from Dunkin' Donuts. Normally at uh, the Dunkin' Donuts around where my parents live, at least the ones that I'm willing to go to who actually get the munchkins right. The one closest to us doesn't even put glaze on the chocolate glazed munchkins, which kind of defeats the purpose. We have to go like way out of our way, like 15 or 20 minutes away to a specific one that's the only one in the area that actually makes them right. But around here, outside of any airport, a box of those munchkins would normally be about $4 or $5. In the airport, it was $18. Sorry, consumer surprise, Matt. Yes, that is because here, get to do my usual self plug or advertisement here. That is because if you go down to for anyone who's new, if you go down to any video that I've made in on the channel in the past like 2 years, underneath the PayPal and Patreon links, you'll see this, a free access drive link. This takes you to this Google Drive that I maintain with all these folders full of different types of graphs and charts and everything. This is all free to access at any time. There's no paywall. Uh, Financial support and etc. is awesome and appreciated, but there will never be a paywall in front of this. I started doing this specifically because so many sites started putting up paywalls. Now, was it oil data sets? Yeah. So yeah, like demand graphs. Uh, these are going to go through interesting changes once we start getting the post Iran war starting updates. But Saudi Arabia averages domestically about 2.5 million barrels per day of consumption, at least up until now. And a decent portion of that comes from the fact that, and the same reason you see that it spikes up in summer and then down in the winter is because, I have to go back out here, Saudi Arabia still electricity electricity generation by source. There we go. Is because Saudi Arabia still generates a decent chunk of its electricity from oil-fired power plants. They are switching those gradually over to natural gas-fired, but about a third of the country's electricity is still coming from oil-fired power plants. So that's part of why their demand is so high, but that's also why their demand spikes so dramatically in the summer and drops so dramatically in the winter. Because during the summer, their electricity demand obviously goes way up. And so the amount of oil being burned to generate electricity in Saudi Arabia goes way up. Okay. Uh, yeah, it was that's good. That means you haven't been using it, which means you're intelligent. Let's see. Uh, the uh, for them, They could do a pipeline. Qatar doesn't export that much oil. They're way more natural gas. They only pump out like 1.3 million barrels per day for oil production and only export about 1 million because they consume like 300 to 400,000 barrels per day. It would be easier for them to just tie into the Saudi pipeline, but a lot of the other Gulf nations don't like the Saudis and wouldn't want to have be in a position where the Saudis get to have any say in things. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty they could do uh, through Oman if they felt like it. Some people online have were saying like you can't possibly do it here because there's like hills and rough terrain there, and quote unquote pipelines can't go over mountains, even though the Saudi pipeline does. Or sorry, it goes over here. These aren't real mountains, anyways. But also, back up home where I should be, where I would love to return to, Alaska, most of our oil is up here on the North Slope, and it comes down in a pipeline that goes up and over mountains, actual mountains, like 4 miles tall. It goes up and over mountains three separate times over three separate mountain ranges. So, no, to all of the know it all bros on Twitter, mountains are not a pipeline issue. Also, Canada does the same thing too. They have a pipeline that goes up through their Rockies and Cascades. Mountains are not an issue. They make it a bit more expensive, but they're not an issue. That could be a thing that happens. I haven't seen anything about that specifically. The only one that is going to be a thing, like basically within a week after this starting, the Iraqi and Jordanian governments came together because this had been an idea before, but they came together and just did the Arnold Schwarzenegger and his black guy CIA friend muscle handshake, and just said, "All right, let's go ahead and do it." And they signed the papers and stamped the ink, and they're assigning the contracts right now. They are going to construct a pipeline from Iraq down through Jordan, and Jordan's going to build a large oil export terminal at their port in Aqaba. And so Iraq's going to start bypassing the Persian Gulf via Jordan once that pipeline is complete, which, if it's speed run at the fastest responsible pace, it could get done in like 3.5 years. A normal realistic speed would turn out to be more like 5 or 7, but they're probably more inclined to speed run it. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's done within the next few years. But so they're going to be doing that, and they're going to start bypassing the Gulf. They do have that pipeline up through Turkey, but there's just too much. Oh, sorry, make them angry. There's just too much discontent and angry back and forths between these four, because Kurdistan is its own thing. There's just too much angry back and forth between the four of these guys. That's why you keep seeing it go back and forth in the news that the pipelines restarted. They're exporting oil through it. Then 2 weeks later, the exports have stopped. They're in a huge disagreement again. So they've effectively decided to just give up on the Turkey pipeline, and Iraq's now going to go with someone who's much more in like their same friend group, and on much better terms with them, and who's usually been friendly to basically everybody. That being Jordan, one of the better, most stable, like and amazing to visit countries in the Middle East. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's the summation for those developments. And again, the deficit is probably a bit smaller, even because there's most likely already been other demand destruction across other countries that I just don't know of, because the number of countries that release like updated data on like weekly basis is very small, and even countries that release like that most recently updated data, even in just like news conferences, is still not that big. So any, for example, physical solid numbers of like demand drop in Europe, for example, I we're almost certainly not going to actually get those numbers until after this month is over, when the Europeans actually feel like compiling their data. And India, I only heard or only saw things about how their demand is contracting a bit, but I did not yet get solid numbers for it. So I'm going to wait until I see those, see how big that is on their part. Ah, yeah, and you see this. This is also like part of why home was superior, and I really wish I could go back. You're not actually going to show it, are you? Darn. But yeah, so back up home, we had the Max Transit system, the Fairbanks Arctic buses, the blue and gold Arctic buses, and it was free. I flashed my Alaska ID, or in my case, since it was the card I had most accessible because you swiped it to get into different university buildings, my university ID. But otherwise, I could put my regular Alaska ID in there. You flash that at the door, and you step onto the bus, and you pay nothing, and you ride around. And it was really well laid out. You could get anywhere that you would ever actually need to go. If you wanted to go visit some nowheresville like you'd see on Life Below Zero or those stupid fake reality shows, then you're going to go driving for a few hours off into the tundra and the mountains. So anyway, West Virginia. I returned to grab my mother, who, let's see, is it not sort of Clarksburg? Does it even appear on the map? The place where, there it is. Yeah, that's where my uncle lives. Grantsville, West Virginia. So that town that my uncle lives in consists of 5 buildings, one of which is abandoned. And I'm talking about stuff other than people's houses. Uh, yeah, Grantsville, West Virginia, consists of 5 buildings in the quote unquote town square, one of which is abandoned, one of which is, and one of which is this like really not that great pancake place called Tudor's Biscuit House. And the pancakes were essentially just rubber with pancake flavoring on them. But this time we didn't go back up to Grantsville. Uh, my mother was already down in Charleston, the capital of West Virginia, and that's where I flew into. And then the next morning we drove back all the way down here, but only after having a multi-hotel adventure, because the quality of hotels, except for this one hotel, the quality of hotels in West Virginia is apparently, like many other things in West Virginia, not of actual quality. But the original reason for going there was because we were taking my uncle down to Charleston, to the hospital for his heart surgery. and my mom was staying there with him to bring him back up home and be with him after the surgery for a while, since after you have your chest cut wide open and your ribs are still fusing back together, you're not supposed to move around and do anything for a while. But we were also technically, and more so on my part, since I would be lying back down after driving up there with my mother. It was seeing him for what might have been the last time, because he's like 65, and there was a fair chance you might not survive having your heart cut open. But he survived, so he'll be around for a bit longer. And I flew back down. Told you guys about that trip last time. But this time, I flew back up, and then we drove back down. This is the end of the actual stream part of the stream. Now this is me talking about West Virginia, in case anybody didn't figure that out. So, as a as a even even after 6 years, my loyalty did not go away. I remained with Delta, and so I flew with Delta down to Atlanta, and then back over to the regular Charleston in South Carolina, because everything filters down through Atlanta from West Virginia, because there are no direct flights to West Virginia from almost anywhere, really, because nobody wants to go to West Virginia. And I discovered why. There are things in West Virginia that I would have wanted to see, like open pit coal mines, underground coal mines, some of the fracking wells on the flatter portion in the west, some of the actual uh, I still don't really consider the Appalachians to be mountains, but some of the actual quote unquote mountain scenery. But the only stuff that was in range of where we were and what we were doing was just West Virginia itself and the West Virginia experience. And I already described some of the things I saw on the way up there, like the in crushed and like dilapidating houses, and then the roofs like broken here and stuff. And then it's like whatever, all the houses look like that, and they're like partially sunken into the mud. And also, on the drive up, there were just like random pits in the ground on the side of the road with like big fires burning. No idea what was burning in those pits. There was no one around like keeping an eye on or tending to the fire. No context to any of these. I saw two like true hillbilly looking dudes outside of a bar on the drive up through West Virginia. They were out drinking like uh, be- at the back of their pickup truck, and they were both shirtless, and they were both missing half of their teeth. So, like I said, true actual hillbilly representation. Now, on the flight up there to retrieve my mother, I saw many things. Firstly, to start out with, we or sorry, just me, I experienced someone who I'm going to nickname West Virginia Armpit Daddy. He was a bigger gentleman of his 40s, with his kids being towed behind him, and they were returning home from wherever else. They were visiting, I guess, maybe their cousins in like the boondock sticks of Alabama or Mississippi. And they walked into the back of the plane, and I noticed it started to smell bad. And this dude was wearing one of those shirts where it's like basically a medieval tunic, as there's no sleeves. It's just the front part and the back part of the shirt. And like there's a little, like, it's all ripped down to here, and there's just that little bit connecting the front and back. And so all his sides, all his arms and his armpits were exposed, and he had armpit hair from like halfway, from like, let's say this is the elbow, from like halfway up to his elbow, down on his armpit itself, and then down his side, like down several ribs. And it was like bare, like thick, bare fur armpit hair. And when this dude grabbed their like bigger uh, carry-on bag to put it up in the bin, the overhead bin, when he lifted up his arms, I died for, I don't know, that's probably the 15th time I've died across my life. I died, as did many other people, because down the row in sequence over the course of a couple seconds, for actually, hold on, I should draw it. Yeah, converging lines or whatever, I guess. So down the rows of seats, everybody started popping up in order, down the plane. Their heads popped up and they all started turning around with that look on their face because he lifted his arms, exposed those pits, and we knew we were in for a fun ride for the next hour. And also, as mentioned at the earlier portion of the stream, I experienced having to pay $18 for a bag of Dunkin' Donuts munchkins instead of the regular $4 that I would pay outside of an airport. But did get to do some more photography finally, and had some video. Oh yeah, I forgot. Got some videos too from the drive. Let me turn down my speakers so it doesn't come through because I want the sounds mixing. Let's see. Yeah, hope this works out okay. But yeah, this was the tunnel. So right at the West Virginia border, there the border is denoted by a specific mountain or a specific ridge, and it was not one where they could feasibly wind the railroad and the highway around because it just continued for too long. So as you can see, it was one of the many cases, one of the fun cases, where the proper infrastructure decision was to go through the mountain. And so this was the tunnel, transitioning from West Virginia out to regular Virginia. That is what the light at the end of the tunnel is in this case, as opposed to in a near-death experience. But yeah, that was the tunnel, and that's only 19 seconds. I think this was the takeoff. Yeah, I got to film a takeoff again. That's the runway. You can see the big thick lines there. That's what denotes it as the actual runway. So the flight from Charleston to Atlanta was on a Boeing 717, which I did not know were still in service. And this one, the flight from Atlanta up to West Virginia was on a little 2x2 seater, a CRJ 900. There's another CRJ 900 right behind us. There's an American 737. I think that's an 800 because it would be a little bit longer in the back if it was 900. Here we go. I wasn't able to uh, I wasn't able to get too much on the flight down. You guys remember because I didn't have the window seat either time, but I did get the window seat on the flight from Atlanta up to Virginia. And it's not too long until V1 and rotate. I think we rotate right about here or so. No, I called it too early. Yeah, about 5 seconds too early. But yeah, up we go. Atlanta Airport. One of my favorite places. Prices of food and stuff inside the airport, the only complaint I really have about it. But look at all that Delta. Everything's Delta, 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 Delta. But yeah, then got to do some photography also. There's a 101, yeah. Oh, and the hotel. If anyone does ever go to West Virginia, if they go to Charleston, West Virginia, do not stay, I repeat, do not stay at the Quality Inn in Charleston, West Virginia, or the Best Western, because they are the same thing. They are the same structure. They're joined together. Do not stay there. So we went through two different rooms there, and it was the same story each time. You know how outside of usually a high school on like the sidewalk, there'll be along the sidewalk, there'll be random spots where there's like pancaked out gum and stuff like mushed down and it's fused with the sidewalk. There were places throughout each room where there was gum crushed and solidified like that, fused into the carpet in a hotel, implying, they've never actually tried to get it out since then and never tried to get it out and clean it in the first place. There was also just dirt and dust and junk all over the floors, clearly indicating they don't actually vacuum the carpets. The sheets on the beds in the Quality Inn / Best Western were stained beige with like ages of sweat and had some recent enough blood stains on them, very clearly indicating that they don't get removed and don't get washed. The sink had bugs in it. The toilet had someone's load still in there. And on the toilet seat, on the underside of it, on the underside, there were solidified, like caked up layers of piss that had solidified into like semi-solid Play-Doh piss gelatin. And on the top side, there were actual streaks of crap still stuck to the top side of the toilet seat. Clearly, hopefully, giving you an indicator that they don't clean the bathrooms in the rooms either. If you do have to stay in Charleston, West Virginia, the only place I would tell you you should stay is the Sleep Inn in Charleston, West Virginia. It's a little bit outside of the downtown area, but it's worth it. They got a 9, or actually, hold on. Yeah, they get an 8.5 out of 10 from me. The only like true issue I had with them was their bathroom door in the rooms is like not a door. It's like a big, it's like a barn door. It's like a slab of wood that's on a rail system, and you slide it this way to close off the bathroom. Except it's kind of wobbly, and there's gaps underneath it, uh, enough to the point where like it's not blocking out the sound. So if you're like taking a crap in there and it's the noisy kind, everyone in the room is going to hear it. But other than that, the Sleep Inn just outside of Charleston was a great place. It was magnificently clean. Like the carpets were immaculately clean, the desk was clean, the sheets were like nice, pure, fluffy white. There were no stains. There was no soaked in ages of sweat. And when we walked in, we actually saw them. And I'm going to draw a big smiley face, show how happy this makes me. We actually saw them. We saw them ourselves in the process of removing sheets from the beds in some of the rooms, and actually saw them because they have the laundry door open. We saw them loading them into the big giant laundry machines and actually washing them, and walked by and saw them vacuuming floors. And when we went into the room, I could smell cleaning chemicals and even a tiny bit of bleach, especially in the bathroom, which was, kind of a happy indicator that they're actually using those things and thus cleaning stuff. And there were no stains of any kind in the shower or on the toilet seat because they actually cleaned them each time. So, Sleep Inn at just outside of Charleston, West Virginia, yes. Quality Inn / Best Western in Charleston, West Virginia, do not go there ever. Do not. Uh, Wait, did the dude OD in the very room you stayed in? Also, you were in Ohio. That was your first mistake. I've never heard of Newark, Ohio. I've heard of Newark, New York, because that's a place that actually exists. I've never heard of Newark, Ohio. Let's see. Where did the stuff start on the way up? Here we go. Yeah, this stuff on the way up. So this is from Charleston Airport. What little goings on I was able to see. The window wasn't the cleanest for this particular angle, so couldn't get the best clearance. There you can see the backs closing on the engines of that 717 for the reverse thrust. There's a American Airlines CRJ 800, it looks like, taxiing out. I think that was the flight to Philadelphia. Yeah, managed to get a bunch of aviation shots this time around. There's some C-17s because Charleston Air Force Base is primarily a cargo and logistics transport hub. Uh, this this plane right here is a tiny little ERJ, not CRJ. This one has only one seat on one side and two seats on the other. Some of the C-17s about like a mile away through the heat haze. That's the milkiness you get. And then just random shots of some of the stuff around the airport and the runway. Think, oh yeah, this is when they just hooked up to that one and started backing it up. Piedmont Airlines is the subsidiary. So a tiny little ERJ by Piedmont Airlines. That means it was probably jumping up to, I don't know, like Spartanburg or something, some other nowhereville. Now, this is the inside of one of the two terminals of Charleston Airport, Charleston, South Carolina, the one that actually exists. Now, that was the ERJ being pushed back. That was a unpainted, unbelonged CS 300 or A220 now, technically, that was just sitting there. Like it was parked. It doesn't even have any engines. I don't know why they're just leaving it there in the middle of a taxiway. Caught a FedEx 757 freight flight making its way out, and then up, turn, and away. C-17 on its way up and out, probably carrying more stuff over to the Middle East, obviously. And then stuff in Atlanta. Just get your nice rows of Delta planes. Got to take off in the background. CRJ 900. Delta, Delta, Delta. My absolute favorite. Pair of Boeing 737 900s here. That's another 717 backing up. And oh, you can see the label ERW. That's Newark. So that one was flying this, whoever was on this flight, they were flying up to Newark, the real Newark, the one in New Jersey. That is still, it's part of New York, as in New York City, as in the giant gray blob you can see from space. Sorry, New Jerseyites in Newark, but it's not actually a separate thing just because there's a line on the map. That is a A320 heading there. Got you another row. Most of them seem to be 737 900s, except this one. That's another 717. There goes that A321 taking off. I think this is looks shorter but not too short. That's probably an A320. Yeah, that's an A320. That is, I think. Ooh, I think that's also an A320. It might be an A319. Caught whatever they're doing out here. Some reworking of the tarmac is probably an older portion that was getting broken up. So now they actually broke it up, and removed it. And here's a little ERJ 175. That is, yeah, I can tell by the nose and the scimitars and the length. That's a 737-900 heading up there. There was a Copter Airways A350 that was just sitting out there, so way out there, and you can see dudes and equipment and maintenance stuff. So it must have broken down or had something. See the engine through the heat haze. DHL 767 freighter, a 757. This is just a 757-200. It's not one of my favorites. My two favorite aircraft of all time are the A340-600, which I will probably never actually get to be on one before they're retired, and the 757 300, which Delta still flies a few of them. So if I ever actually had a huge amount of money somehow and could fly when I wanted to, not on anybody's leash, whether I did so to visit a specific place or not, or just to get on a 737-300 or 757-300 before they're retired, I probably would have access to or be able to fly on a 757-300 again. I have been on one twice, but the last time was like way back in 2017, I think, and before that it was way back in 2000 and was it 2008? Was it 2008? I think it was. Yeah, yeah, it was 2008. It was on the way back from we had visited Vancouver. That was back when I was still in high school. Yeah, there. That's Cutter. That particular tool at the replacing the normal claw at the end of the excavator. That's a concrete cutter. You can see the line it's been cutting along. That's for when you want to section out stuff and get a good like separation trench between the parts you don't want damaged and the part that you intend to smash and destroy with jackhammers. Because if it was still all connected, and even if you just had all the jackhammers and stuff in one specific spot, the vibration would carry out through the rest of the concrete and would start causing cracks. So that's a concrete, I guess you could call it a line drawer if you want, gets you some separation. Delta A350, that one was, I believe, heading to South Korea. So that was a 13 or 14-hour flight that whoever was on that was getting on. 767 would be my second place favorite. Like I said, first place is tied between the 737 300, or sorry, 757 300 and A340 600. There's a 737-900 landing. There's a 717 that took off a while ago that I wasn't able to catch in time. Here comes the CRJ rolling by. You can see the back spots flapped open for reverse thrust on that 717, caught it landing. Reverse thrust. And there's one heading up on takeoff. Ooh, yeah, you can see wheels in the process of going up. Wheels just about already up, and the doors are starting to close. And the doors are closed, gears up. CRJ looks like a CRJ 700 taking off. There's the 717 that just landed. Here it comes, rolling by. ERJ 175. Another 757 200. That's you taking off? Yeah, you're taking off. Here's one that just landed, coming to say hello. And there's a 717. There's a CRJ. Is this one 900 or 700? I'd have to see the length of the front section to be able to tell. If this is the one that was at my gate that I went up on, then it was a 900. Oh, got some long distance inbounds. This looks like a 757 200. Yep. Another 737 900 there because Delta is sticking with the NGs and is not buying any of the 737 MAX aircraft because they're not stupid. Scimitar winglets, some cargo shipments, Delta tail, rear infrastructure, inbound, and someone about to take off. This looks like another 757 200. Yep. Who's inbound here? CRJ, most likely. And buy and buy and buy. Are you a 900? You look pretty long. No, you're a 700. Just the general view out of this particular spot. One of those CRJs coming by, gleaming in the sun. Get me some Delta logo. There's a 737 900 about to take off. You look a bit chubby from the front. It might be an 800. I think it is an 800. Inbound landing. Are you another 757? Are you my favorite? No, you're just a 200. You're still pretty good, but I want a 300. There is a A330. I don't know if it's a regular or if it's a Neo. I would have to see the fronts and see the window designs to know for certain if it was a Neo. But there's an A330 regardless. A330 close-ups. OGG. Oh, what airport code is that? Is that for this one specifically though? Hold on. I can't tell if that's specifically for this one for E10. OGG. Let me look that up. Uh, Kahului, so Hawaii. Blah blah blah. Wait, they literally did just put you in a room where a dude just OD'd himself. Uh, I am still using a Canon SX 540 that I bought in early 2020. So A330s, yeah, I know Delta likes to use A330s for their Hawaii flights. That was WestJet, which is a lesser known Canadian airline. Then a mix of Shark Tales, the Command Tower, D5, that was mine. So this is a CRJ 900, at least the nose of it. This is the one I was about to get on. You can kind of see the guys in there. There comes Southwest. 737. This looks like a normal one, so I don't think this was the max one or the designed to immediate designed with an autopilot that always just wants to nosedive and kill everyone version. More Delta tails. All right, stuff. These get a little bit messy because the window wasn't the cleanest. These are from inside the plane. CRJs are refueled through the top of the wing as opposed to the underside. But got a few things. Some of these I can use in like the oil demand videos for jet fuel visuals. But got stuff from the interior, just like I did last time, as they have changed some things up. 757 right next to us, getting fueled under wing as most aircraft do. CRJs are fueled from the top of the wing, as are I know SAB 2000s are the turboprop planes that Ken Air uses on the flights I took between Fairbanks and Anchorage back up home. There's another 757 across the way, and getting some cloudscape stuff. That one, it focused on the window, so let's delete that. Cloudscape stuff, cloudscape, some infrastructure photography, get some of the highways and overpasses and stuff. And the clouds are starting to obscure. Some more highway, some more cloudscape. That one got blurred, delete. That one got blurred, delete. That one got blurred, delete. There we go. Cloudscape. Oh yeah, I took these to show the pilots when we got on the ground afterwards. There was like a weird, looked like a black leather strip or something sticking out from one of the speed brakes. So I just took those to show them afterwards. And I took them again because I ended up taking a bunch more pictures after that. So I wanted to have them at the forefront so I didn't have to scroll through too much to get to them. Some more cloudscape stuff. Cloudscape, that one got blurry, so we delete it. We delete that one too. Cloudscape, cloudscape, winglet. These spikes are called spark wicks. That's what dissipates the electrons and lightning out off of the wing if the plane gets struck. Like I said, I kept retaking some of those to make sure I had them at the forefront. This couldn't manage to get clear shots of it. This is a coal-fired power plant near Charleston, West Virginia. This is Charleston, West Virginia itself. Getting some shots as we were circling around. Yeah, around here or so is where the quote unquote Best Western slash Quality Inn, it doesn't deserve that name, is. And then back up here off screen to your right, further north technically, up the highway a little bit, about a mile or two out of town, out of the city is where the Sleep Inn was, the only hotel that was actually made for human habitation. But yeah, I wanted to wander around and actually get some photography, like on ground in the city, but I ended up not being able to because we were dealing with that hotel, and then we decided we weren't going to deal with it. So we left, went out, got that room at the Sleep Inn, then came back uh, to to check out from that other hotel and had to wander around to get food. And my mother was starting to get tired and get a headache. So we ended up just going back to the Sleep Inn so we could eat and she could go to sleep. If we actually had a tolerable hotel in the city, I could have just wandered around and done photography and everything and then walked back. But we had to go all the way out because the in city experience was something else. I mean, not not unwarranted for an experience in West Virginia, but yeah. And then took a few more to show the pilots, and then from the nasty room, I was able to get a few like infrastructure shots that I can use for videos of rooftop AC units. That one's a bit too blurry, so we can delete that. Some more infrastructure and traffic shots because there was a freeway nearby. That one got too blurred, so delete it. That one got too blurred, so delete it. And that one. Oh yeah, and this was also happening. There was black mold growing around on the patio place where the pool of the Quality Inn used to be, and it was spreading. And there's also algae in there growing that was starting to spread around too, and just random busted up stuff. And this chair got some piss and crap stains. That's not what they actually are, but they might as well be. You had mold growing on and inside the heating unit, and this is stuff from the drive back down. These are the tilt-a-truck signs because there's a lot of tight turns around the mountains, and you're supposed to drive slower. Nobody obeys it, but you're supposed to drive slower to avoid tipping over and going over the edge. At some points, it's a 5% incline. That was a shot from the tunnel, but it got blurry. There we go. There's better shots. There's more than just one tunnel. There's the tunnel at the West Virginia border, but there's another one in the middle of West Virginia itself. I think these are me trying to get shots of the skyscrapers in Charlotte when we were passing by North Carolina, but everything was too like blue hazed because of both the current weather there at the time and the distance we were at. So I wasn't able to really get anything. Oops, and now that's the end of the photography. Okay, so that's going to be it. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I'll be dropping off unless I'll wait like 30 seconds for the delay to see if anything else comes up. But otherwise, then I'm going to be dropping off. All right, doesn't look like it. So that's going to go ahead and be the end. All right, I will see you guys around next time. Next week, I don't know, probably want to return to the normal Tuesday and Thursday version. But otherwise, I'll try to get the normal videos up too. Thanks to the two of you who super chatted stuff. Thanks for the cash. I will see you guys around.